Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are just getting started with the April Coffee and Real Estate Get Together live chat. Just making sure everything is working correctly here. It looks like we are good to go. I'm not seeing any issues. Yeah, there we go. And audio's even working. Magical. All right. So we've got all of the numbers that we usually have set for today's show. We're also going to take a little time to talk about a couple of things relating to affordability, interest rates, those kinds of things, because I think those are things that obviously affect everyone. But we are reaching some milestones. For those of you who listen to my podcast, which now comes out every Monday morning, in the past I've discussed. Let's go ahead. Let's have a look. I have discussed what I thought the magic number was for interest rates. And by magic number, I mean a whole lot of what happens with interest rates is not just financial, but psychological, right? We've had this conversation before, way back when I first started in real estate in the late 80s. We had insane interest rates, double digit, right? 13%, 14%. Yes, a 13% mortgage was a common thing. And as soon as interest rates hit 9 point anything, right? I can remember the week where we went from 10 point something to 9.9. Suddenly everything sold because no one thought that interest rates could ever get that low again. Because people had double digit interest rates for a super long time, just like we've had super low interest rates. So what's that psychological point that tips it the other direction? And I was theorizing it was 5%. And when I checked interest rates yesterday here locally in Morgan Hill, San Jose, Gilroy, San Martin, Los Gatos, basically the Bay Area. Depending on your credit rating, you were going to get interest rates between 4.6 and 5.1. So we've kind of nudged up to that 5% number. So let's talk about that a little bit later in the show. We're going to do the numbers first as we usually do. But let's go ahead and start off with the coffee and real estate. This will be I didn't even get a chance to have any coffee before I sat down for the show. Today's beans are from Kicking Horse espresso specific beans. A couple of you reached out to tell me specifically the beans I was doing before were not espresso, and that's very true. But it's coffee. It's a caffeine delivery system for me, and that's really what I was going for. Okay, so we can go ahead and jump in here and start looking at numbers. Let's go ahead and just dazzle you with the numbers right off the bat here. So this is for March. We're obviously looking at last month because we want to look at whole month chunks. And for this particular page, we are going to look at the same month 1 year apart. So March this year versus March last year. And try to think in your head what was going on in March of last year, right? We were all still in COVID. We were feeling like we were going to come out of COVID. We still had the restrictions in place relating to showings and having to fill out forms and doing all these other things. For those of you who aren't aware, when you were showing a home during the primary cut of COVID, you had to get a form that was filled out where a buyer would commit to the precautions they would take. You'd have to get that signed. You'd have to get that submitted to the listing agent before you could show the house. So it created a long pole in the process, particularly if you saw a home and wanted to go look at it right now, right? A home that just came on the market. Wow, that's really good. This is actually the first time I've ever had these beans. And they're actually, I could taste the difference. Even though I put milk and chocolate and all this other stuff in there, it's actually kind of nice. All right, sorry. Anyway, so psychologically, things were a little different. Now, I don't know where we are now. Today, are we less worried? Are we more worried? I feel like we're less worried. The people I talk to are less worried. If we want to focus on headlines, it's hard to take a pick, right? Some folks are talking about restrictions coming back. Some folks are talking about new mandates, all kinds of things. But as I deal with people on a day-to-day basis, I do not get the same vibe I did a year ago. There's a lot less fear. And the fear that we've been having to wrestle with most has been on the part of sellers. Whether it was last year, sellers weren't selling because they just didn't want anyone in their house. This year, I'm seeing folks that are selling. I had someone who reached out to me actually who is in uh, Campbell. We ended up not working together, but they're done. They're going to go out of the state. They're leaving. This is just another number, right, in that particular column that we've talked about before, where for a variety of reasons, whether it's relating to policies or taxes that are coming down the pike or whatever. These are folks that are leaving the state, not just relocating within the state. And originally, this person was talking about relocating within the state, but it now sounds like they're going to go out of state. So they hit a frustration level. They were on a path to sort of work through things a little bit more. I don't know, at a slower pace, but then something tipped. Something in the middle of the month, a month or two ago, hit, and they're like, all right, that's it, we're out, we're done. And that, surprisingly enough, that is not as uncommon as you would think. I've had several folks over the last year who've expressed the same sort of frustrations. All right. For our purposes today, though, let's go ahead and just look at March of 2022 compared to March of 2021. And for Santa Clara County, and again, I picked Morgan Hill as the smaller city just because that's my home territory. I do work all the way from Campbell, even as far up as Mountain View, all the way down to Gilroy. So and even San Juan Bautista. I really like San Juan Bautista, but maybe that's just me. But anyway, so I picked Morgan Hill because it happens to be where I am. I picked San Jose as another city that's a little bit bigger because it has bigger numbers. It's more statistically reliable. You can get huge variations when you're picking super small communities. Like, I mean, if we've only got a total of 63 listings in Morgan Hill, well, you know, a single listing could throw things off a direction relating to average price or days on market or those kinds of things. So wider fluctuations and smaller sample sizes are not uncommon. So I like to try to buffer that with bordering cities that are larger. So that's why we pick San Jose. And it also happens I do a lot of business in South San Jose. So that's a good one to do. And then, of course, Santa Clara County is going to give us the biggest numbers and give us the biggest local trends indicators. So that's why I picked those three. So I had someone ask me why I didn't use some other cities, and that's the reasoning. So that's why those are the cities that you see there. All right, so we saw a 29.3% decrease. Now, you're going to see some interesting numbers here in a minute when we go to the next page. But for right now, a 29.3, almost a 30% drop in the total active listings. And that's nuts. In San Jose, 24% drop. In Morgan Hill, a 42% drop. Now, again, remember, we can see bigger fluctuations. So when we get to the trending lines that we're going to look at in a minute, that's what you want to use to try to clue into any trends that might be profitable for you as a buyer, seller, and investor. But in terms of just taking a number at face value, that Santa Clara County number in terms of a broad trend, that is absolutely one to go with a 30% decrease in the total active listings. And that's what we see here in this chart. Yes, I've got it set up so you're seeing my cursor. Fantastic. And you can get a visual representation of the difference between the 2 years. So we're down to 1,009 here for March of 2022, where we were at 1,427 in March of 2021. Now, in terms of new listings, this is interesting, right? This is one of the things I've been harping on as we need more of these, right? New listings. So we're actually up in all the areas that I track here. And I'm guessing if we were to do every city, it would be similar since we're seeing it consistent across the board. We had a 4.8% increase in the number of new listings that came on the market compared to the same time last year. We had a nearly 6% increase in San Jose, and we had a 3.5% increase in Morgan Hill. These are all good things. And you can see visually represented, it's not a huge number graphically, but seeing it going that direction is a good thing. And seeing it going that way across the board is an even better thing. Now, in terms of number of homes sold, in Santa Clara County, we had a 1.3% increase from the same time last year. In San Jose, we had a 3.3% increase. And in Morgan Hill, we had a 4.7% decrease. Again, I wouldn't get too upset about that because it's a lower sample size. So each house that does or doesn't do something has a much bigger influence on the overall picture. I'd say that's pretty close to simply being a wash. But I think it also has something to do with the fact that we have the lowest inventory, right? We have the biggest drop, to have basically half the number of listings we did last year. The limiting factor here, the reason why homes didn't sell, is because we just didn't have the homes to sell. The homes didn't exist on the market to get them sold. So don't take that 4.7 as a hard. In fact, you should just round it to 5% due to inaccuracies. But in terms of just a broader trend and explaining why it went that direction, I think inventory is the answer. Okay, now let's get to average price, because this is also interesting. As we escalate from location to location, as we go broad, as we go 10,000 foot view with Santa Clara County, we can see that the average list price. Now remember, I do list price in this category different than most other agents. I do original list price. And by original list price, I mean when you sat down as a seller to list your home with a real estate agent or a real estate broker, and they said, this is what we're going to list your house for, that's the number they wrote down. Or at least it's the first number that they put into the MLS. So if before it ended up going to the MLS, you guys in your heads changed the number or agreed on a new number, it doesn't obviously, there's no way for me to know that number that was never entered into the multiple listing service. But if you sat down with your agent or broker and entered a number and then it immediately went into the MLS, that's what this number is. It is not the number that was in the MLS at the time the home sold, as you may have dropped the price or increased the price, right? The reason I do that is because for my seller watchers, my watchers who are sellers, I want you to be calibrated to that number you were initially expecting, whether it was higher or lower, right? And so in terms of what expectations were, so this is a good number for sort of calibrating ourselves to the expectations of sellers, right? In Santa Clara County in general, seller expectations in terms of what they were going to get when they listed their home was up 7.1%. In San Jose, it was up 16.1%. And continuing our trend from last month, if you'll remember, we had a similar situation last month, 26.2%. So sellers in Morgan Hill are very much thinking they need to get much more for their homes. And as we see from average sales price, they're not wrong. And I think it's the folks who have decided to live in Morgan Hill and are fighting the inventory fight that's causing so much of this. The average sales price, let's go ahead and just jump in and take a look at that. In Santa Clara County in general, average sales price was up 18%. And when I say these numbers out loud, it just blows my mind. To have an average sales price over the entire county of $1,873,000 is just nuts. And obviously, Santa Clara County encompasses a lot of super high-end areas where the average home price is much higher. Los Altos, Palo Alto, areas where I actually started my career, where homes are far more expensive, obviously, kicking that up. But let's get into communities that are a little bit more like our own. San Jose is up 20.3% from the same time last year at $1.5 million. And Morgan Hill is at 27.8% increase from the same time last year at about $1.45 million is the average sales price. Now, there are a couple of things I've done in terms of accessibility for folks on my site. So if we have time, I'll show you those. There's one thing I'll definitely show you because I think you can benefit from it. Whether you want to just stay in the know of what's going on with the market in general, or you want to get more precise real estate data relating to you and your neighborhood. I've got two tools that I can turn you on to that don't cost you anything and don't require you to contact me. So it's a nice way to sort of get data without having to give me a phone call or reach out to me directly. Let's look at percent over under asking price. So this is how much folks are getting of their home price. In Santa Clara County, folks are getting 115.3%, so about 15.3% over asking price, which is a crazy number. And that's an 8% increase just from the same time last year, which was at 106.8. In San Jose, 116%, 7.9% higher than the same time last year. And in Morgan Hill, 111.8%, which is a 6.5% increase from the same time last year. So let's kind of, in our minds, just wrap our heads around the data that we've seen. So we saw, because this explains the numbers a little bit. So obviously inventory is the problem, right? Because if you see folks continuing to pay 11.8%, which implies multiple offers on typical homes, that starts to explain why you saw what was going on with that downturn in the total number of homes sold. It was not fewer buyers were out there buying, or there was any sellers were having any trouble getting homes sold. It was there were not homes to buy, right? So that answers that question right out of the chute. If you see that kind of a number where you've got 11.8% over your asking price, there's two things you can conclude there. One, there's not enough inventory in this case, and two, there were multiple offers. So that really just kind of sums it up. In terms of days on market, again, we continue to track this number, but this number is meaningless right now because the only thing that's keeping homes on the market for even this long, it was 11 days in Santa Clara County, it was 11 days in San Jose, and it was 12 days in Morgan Hill. The only reason, and it was more or less the same thing last year, is because agents are making buyers wait. They're telling buyers, we will not accept any offers until this date. And it's almost always at least 7 days. I always go with 10 days minimum, and I'll sometimes go with 14 days. Depending on how I feel about the market or how I feel about what's going on with the property, in my mind and working as an advisor with my sellers, we're going to decide, do we want to have 2 weekends of opportunity to view the house, or do we want to just have 1 weekend of opportunity? I tend to like 2, particularly in a market like this that's so insane. And it also depends on when you went live on the MLS. If you went live on the MLS on a Thursday or a Friday, I don't think you want to do just 1 weekend. You're going to want to do 2. There may be people who are only getting, and this is obviously not the smart way to go if you're shopping in a market like this, but there may be very qualified buyers who would love your home who are only getting results on homes once a week. Usually that's the distribution, right? It's in the way I set up searches for my buyers, I calibrate with them how frequently they want to get an update. Do they want to get an update the second it comes up on the MLS? Do they want to get once a day? Do they want to get once a week? Or do they want to get once a month? So we have that conversation. And typically right now, they get it immediately. So if a home gets listed, as soon as it shows up in the MLS, my buyers typically will get an email. My nose is itching like crazy. And the last thing I want to do on video is play with my nose. But here we are. Okay, so we've covered these numbers. Let's go ahead and jump into and look at tracking over time for Santa Clara County. Maybe I can distract my nose itch with another swig of coffee here. So let's go ahead and look. And we've talked before about interesting pivot points, right? Where are we? Anytime you see a total switch, like we saw one back here in December, right? And that's a typical time. January has now sort of become the new start of the season where people just jump in. And we've just seen new listings jump, which is awesome, right? We're now at the point where if we look back historically, we're reaching the peak. If we look back at March of past times, right? Look at that. We're not quite there. We're almost there. But we are on a trajectory to potentially do some interesting stuff here. Now, last year at March, we saw a downturn after March in terms of total listings, new listings. And so here comes crystal ball time. I don't think we're going to see that this year. I think we're going to continue to see more listings coming on the market as we go through. I mean, look at the difference here. We started lower and we're almost to the same height. So clearly, the motivation level of folks coming onto the market is different than it was last year because we didn't get as much of a surge. That's a pretty big surge. I honestly think we're going to see this rise, and I'm even going to project that over the next couple of months, we will go to the highest levels of new listings coming on the market than we've seen for all of this data. Now, here's the big problem. Obviously, with new listings, this needs to go up too, or it will go up, right? You add new listings. Total active listings, and this is a month-by-month thing. So as we're selling off listings, and look at the big jump in homes sold, right? Going right along with that increase in listings, a jump in homes sold that is steeper than the number of new listings, which tells you, A, we're keeping pace with homes that are we're selling them as fast as we can list them, and we're then selling off homes that are less desirable in the market for whatever reason. We're dipping into the existing inventory that we had as we went into that month. That's what this chunk of numbers tells us, right? Because we're it's simply an activity indicator. We've got more. We've got homes that were added. We've got the number of listings was higher than last year, um, and higher than last month. Right? Look, this is our listings number. The green, the bright green, is the new listings. So look at those go. But we still have not satisfied the pent up buyer desire out there. All right. So that's the continuing reality is the inventory and buyer demand. What's interesting is in the interest rates. You did have interest rates playing into this a month ago. Not as much because any homes that closed in the month of March probably went into escrow either early March or late April. Late February. So keep that in mind as we go through this. Because we've seen an awful lot of increase in interest rates. So the first month we're going to see current interest rates actually hitting statistics. Little bit this month, much more in May. So when we cover the May numbers, that'll be the first indicator. And I plan on doing a pretty regular check. I do at least a weekly check on numbers for all of these markets as we go through the month. I may do a little bit more frequently based on when the home went into escrow. So anything that went into escrow over the last 2 weeks is going to be super interesting to watch over the next few weeks and see what happens with those. I'm anxious to see if we happen to see an increase in homes coming back onto the market after going into escrow. Just as a statistical interest. I don't have any theories on why that would be the thing, but since there are so many financing challenges, I can't help but wonder if we'll see people who might be stretching too far on the financing end up not getting through final underwriting on their loans, just from an expense standpoint, when everything gets looked at. We'll see. I had someone ask me if I still thought 16% over in San Jose, and 11.8% in Morgan Hill. So all above 10% in terms of that number. So, yeah. Next on the news feed here that looked good was another article from Realtor, more buyers making compromises to find suitable homes. And I wanted to see percentage of buyers who compromised on specific home features relative to initial expectations. Now, why is this one interesting? Well, if you're a seller, knowing the top things buyers are willing to sacrifice might be useful for you, right? If you are a home flipper or an investor, these are things to keep in mind. So obviously the first one's going to be higher price. The next thing is age of the home, which is interesting. It means that they're now, buyers will frequently say, I don't want to look at a home that's more than 10 years old. I get that buying request frequently. What this means is they've now said 20 years or removed the filter for age entirely so that they can see all of the listings out there that meet their criteria aside from age. So it ranges from extending the filter to a longer period of time to completely eliminating it and not filtering homes on that category at all. When I'm working with buyers, normally we simply delete that as a filtering option. Smaller homes, this would be, and again, the way this manifests in a search would be square footage, right? If someone says, you know what, I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, but it's got to be at least 1,500 square feet. We've lived in 1,300, 1,400, and we've lived in 1,700. It's got to be more than 1,500 square feet. So that often, I don't usually find them deleting that one entirely. I've seen them roll it down from, say, 1,500 to 1,100. Worst home condition is another one. This is one that's, I'm surprised this one's as high on the list. I'm surprised this one's only number 4 on this list. I would have expected to be a little further down. I tend to find buyers are concerned in general when they find that things need to be done because they worry about what else might be hidden that they can't see that needs work. Smaller lot yard. I'm surprised that one's not higher. I've seen that one be a big one when that's usually lot size, if you've got a search in there for lot size. Home condition is one that they tend to manually check themselves. There's no way to filter for home condition, but home condition and age are usually very tightly linked in terms of a buyer's mind when they're approaching a property. Fewer bedrooms. I'm actually surprised this one is not maybe is not a little lower. Usually, if you've decided on a number of bedrooms, or excuse me, bathrooms. I'm sorry, bathrooms makes total sense for me there. Instead of going with 2, go with maybe 1.5, or if you wanted 3, going with 2. Worst location, yeah, fewer bedrooms. That's about where I expected bedrooms to be, given you pick your bedrooms typically based on need. Some folks will add a bedroom because they're thinking they're going to work from home. So that gives them a little flexibility. Lower quality school district. This is an interesting one because it really gives you an insight into the mindset of the typical buyer right now who may not have children. Or instead of having children, may have been thinking about having them. And they're willing to take these things on. Now, what's interesting is when we get into a scenario where buyers are looking to cut corners on things, which is where we are, typically, and this is a way far ahead indicator, we have recently seen people staying in homes longer than usual, right? Some folks are buying homes with the stated intent at the time of this is going to be their home forever. They're done. They've bought their home. They're going to have their kids. They're going to do what they're going to do, or they're not going to have their kids, whatever their plan is. And this is it. They're staying in that house. A lot more of that. When you get into this mode where folks are making compromises, you find that's no longer the case. And we start to return to the metric that tends to indicate that you'll sell your house every 4 to 7 years, 3 to 6 years, right in that neighborhood. And once we've seen this start to happen, from then on, that tends to be real. So 3-4 years from now, we would likely see more folks selling as they try to move up to get the things in the home that they wanted originally. All right, so that's about it for that one. We already talked about Bay Area housing. Let's go ahead and do this one real quick before we call it. This was super surprising to me just because of the huge numbers. And I think that if they go a little wider, and I think in today's world you do have to go a little wider, the 10 most affordable suburbs to live in, if for some reason San Francisco is your thing, Um, I don't know how many of you have been to San Francisco recently. I was in San Francisco just a couple of weeks ago, and somebody really needs to get control of San Francisco. It is not super pleasant. Now, I was born in San Francisco. As a architectural geek, I love some of what goes on in San Francisco. San Francisco has some beautiful homes, some beautiful architecture. There's a lot of neat stuff to see in terms of different styles of architecture that are around. I love a lot of the industrial stuff. I know a lot of people don't. I actually love a lot of the industrial stuff in Oakland, which unfortunately tends to be in some of the not so great neighborhoods in Oakland. But there's some great old turn of the century, and when I say turn of the century, I mean 1900 to 2000 to 1800 to 1900. Beautiful buildings there that are, I think, spectacular and could really use someone to go in there and give them some love and turn them into amazing places to live. But anyway, so Emeryville is number one on this list, and their median home price is $525,000 with a 20-minute drive. So not a horrible idea. If you want, if that's a thing for you, and I honestly think that you as an investor, if you're someone who's thinking about starting your investing career, and you want to stick in the Bay Area, and I think that deserves some careful consideration. I would strongly suggest that anyone who wants to get into investing in California, you might be better off not looking in this area just because of allocation of your resources. I think you're better off doing something like a duplex. A multifamily is usually always going to be a bigger bang for the buck in terms of your investment. But I talk to more and more folks who are moving their investments, and this blows my mind. Folks who have investment properties that are selling their California property and they're buying elsewhere. They're buying an investment property, say in Texas or in Florida or other places. I think there is a general concern that at some point something's going to come to a head, and they're going to try to hit up property owners to make up the difference in costs for things that the government's trying to pay for versus what income they actually have. So, in any event, Emeryville, California, is at 525,000. So I thought it might be fun. Well, let's go ahead and review the list first, and then maybe we'll make a quick look at Emeryville. Richmond, California is next, and the jump is almost $200,000 in costs. So we don't take a nice gentle jump from 525 to say 575 or 600 or 650 as the average. We jump up to 702,000, 30 minutes away. Richmond, average 702,000. Oakland is number three at 845,000. San Leandro is next at 881,000 for the median home price, and they're picking median home, not average. Median means that if that price, there's the same number of homes above it as below it, right? So at that point, you have an equal number of homes above that price as below that price versus the average price, which is just taking all of the prices, averaging them up, and then dividing it by the total number of homes, which gives you the average price. I don't know if Redfin is using their terminology incorrectly or not. I find many of these outlets frequently do. San Bruno. I am no stranger to San Bruno. I have in the past, way back when I was in my college days, I actually worked for a company in San Bruno when I was in college. That was a heck of a commute. $975,000 is the average, or the median. El Cerrito, 1.146 is the median. Daly City is 1.167 million. Pacifica, I love Pacifica, 1.3 million. And South San Francisco, 1.325. Alameda, 1.335. Now let's go ahead and do Emeryville, right? That was one reason why I brought up Realtor. Let's see if we can do this search without having to take a nap beforehand. Let's look at Emeryville. And see what we can see. Yeah, so I finally have bitten the bullet. Now, I do all of this work, obviously, on a Mac. I have an amazing Windows machine sitting next to me that could probably blow right through this stuff. But I like using numbers as my spreadsheet. So there is a new Mac on the way, which should take care of these speed problems. And if it doesn't, I'll just migrate over to the Windows machine for these things. Because when I do meetings with folks on the Windows machine, and we're sharing with clients, for instance, I'll walk clients through some of this in terms of searching, and we'll cooperatively filter through the available properties to look at and those kinds of things. The Windows machine just doesn't even skip a beat. And typically, if I'm doing Zoom, it works okay on the Mac as well. But for some reason, whenever I'm streaming, whenever I'm using OBS. Okay, so there's where Emeryville is. It should look familiar to you. I spent quite a bit of time up here as one of my boys went to Berkeley, so we were looking for places for him, and Emeryville was one of the places we were looking at renting for him. And as you look at these, because when that quote unquote median came out, I'm like, wow, I don't think that median may be as correct as everyone says. So it may be correct if what you're looking at is not just single family residentials, right? So I think it's reasonable if you're potentially doing condos and townhomes. Let's see, any is what we want. So let's try to calibrate ourselves just to single family residential to start. And I think we're going to find pretty dramatically that these are. So here's one for $599, but it's apartment 219, which does not feel like that's a single family. Let's zoom in here a bit. I'm guessing it hasn't updated yet. So here's what we got. So all these ones that say X number of units, those are going to be condos, right? Those are going to be condos in town. Yeah, there we go. So let's look at what's disappeared. So the problem is the problem we've experienced everywhere, where there simply are no single-family residential homes available. Now, here's one just outside Emeryville for $799, $999, $775, $1.2 million. This one, I don't know how much, $849,000. But if we calibrate ourselves to saying, all right, okay, maybe single-family residential is a little bit more than we could handle in Emeryville. Let's go with a townhome. Let's go with a townhome or a condo and be done with that. And let's say we would like at least 2 beds, right? Because let's say we've actually got another human being that we live with. And let's say at least 2 baths. Is that reasonable? So we're going through this exercise just to explore what they are defining as the reasonable San Francisco suburb. Because none of it smacks as real to me, right? I see that number. I see that 500 and whatever it was, right? What was that? 500. What did they say? 525. And immediately my head starts to scream baloney. And sure enough, what do we see? We see 645. We see 979. We see 895. We see 849. We see 650. Now, I would immediately get drawn to this simply because its location suggests it's already pending. Let's not look at pending. Oh wait, this is where we want to go. Hide contingent and pending. Done. Let's see how many disappear. Yeah. All right. So here's what we've got. We have nothing even close. and this, I'm going to go back and take a look at this one because that's interesting. I got to think that whatever that was, that view's got to be interesting, right? So here's the one for 865. It is in that giganto building. It's 2 bed, 2 bath, 1,300 square feet, so a decent sized place. So here's the thing. And here's when you see stories like this, it's so important to look at other information. The reason why I'm even more skeptical is because we decided, okay, well, family residential isn't really going to do it at that price point, right? So let's go ahead and look at townhomes and condos. Well, if we're going to look at townhomes and condos, we have to understand we're going to pay an HOA fee. And if we were to buy a single family residential that doesn't have HOA fees, we can roll whatever our expense was going to be for the HOA fees into what we were expecting to pay for our mortgage, which changes things, right? Because and I haven't looked at this yet. I don't know what it is. I'm going to bet you it is a lot of money. I'm going to bet you it's over $500. So let's take a look and see. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, $755 a month in HOA fees. That is a lot of money. It's also an amount you don't have any control over. That amount can go up. The HOA, maybe something happens. I own a condo where there's an HOA. I had to write a check for $20,000 last year because of special work that needed to get done relating to sewer work. So there is also that. That's one reason why it's so important to be really vigorous about examining the documents for the HOA. You know, how much of a reserve do they have? Do they have any legal action going on? Is the city telling them that, hey, you know, X, Y, and Z is not sufficient? Anything that was built in like the 70s, you need to really be careful about. If they've done nothing, if they've done no repiping, if they've done no infrastructure stuff really, other than just keep the elevators working, you need to be super careful about that stuff. So even this one, which would be $865,000, which is $300,000 above the average that Redfin was trying to tell you is true, you've now got a $755 HOA fee that you're going to have to pay, and that is freaking crazy. So you know, it's all about getting one layer down, and this is something I talk a lot about when I'm working with clients. You know, that first blush, the first thing that they tell you about should be a great starting point, right? So an article like that, where we talk about the 10 most affordable suburbs. Okay, great. That's a great starting point for you as a aspiring investor to start looking at what's available there. That's great. If we do believe that the markets in general in Silicon Valley and the Bay Area are going to continue to grow, they may see some fluctuations, but if I'm looking to buy and hold and I have faith that, and the numbers tend to bear out, that the market will continue to survive, it'll continue to grow, let's go someplace where I'm going to take advantage of that, but at the lowest point, lowest price point possible. And a property like this is amazing because it's clearly going to give you some views, right? If it's a high rise, hopefully it's facing the water. If not, you're going to get some nice mountain views. But in any event, go to that next level down. Do your due diligence. Do what I just did. Do some searching. And if you want articles that are being supported or being published out or being promoted by me that are good for that, find me on Twitter. I think that's a great place to start. I filter out a lot of the baloney and try to only feed you stories that are going to be actually useful. And I'll usually add a comment of why it's useful when I retweet those things. So, all right, folks, we didn't get any questions from the folks watching the show this morning, but that's okay. We had plenty of data and information to cover today. I hope it's been useful. We're seeing the market making some interesting turns. We'll obviously continue to update as that happens. Make sure to look out for my podcast on Monday morning that's going to be coming out. It's called Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. That's me. I've been doing it since January of 2007. It is up on iTunes. You can find it on my website, soldbyrobert.com. And of course, I also publish articles. I publish an archive of these. So feel free to check me out there. And do make sure to make use of those tools that are right there on the front landing page of soldbyrobert.com. Whether you're looking to search or find out the value of your home right now, I think it's a great place to start. And for what I've seen of all the ones I've tried, the home valuation one I've landed on right now is the most accurate one I've seen so far. Better than Zillow when I compare it to that. So hopefully you'll get some good use out of that. All right, folks, thanks again for coming out. I hope you enjoyed your coffee and real estate this morning. and I will see you all next time.